Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kammerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
Welcome back, Passion Pursuers. Tyler Kammerman here with you as always. I am here today with my friend Pam Steinick. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yes, I'm excited to talk to Pam. So our spouses worked together. We have been clients, all the things, lots of layers to our relationship with Pam. But I'm going to kick things off just to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So Pam has been an occupational therapist since 1991. And before I jumped into her bio, I meant to say that it's written in first person. So rather than trying to correct it the whole time, I'm just going to say I, and you're going to have to pretend that I'm Pam for a little bit, everybody, okay? So Pam's been an occupational therapist since 1991. I started out working in neuro rehab, brain injury rehabilitation, and loved it. I've always been a person who is constantly seeking out more education, especially when you find you aren't able to help people enough with what you know. So I studied and became an NDT, or Neuro Developmental Treatment, studied and became certified in NDT, Neuro Development Treatment, early in my career. As I moved into other areas of rehab, I took trainings in Myofascial Release, hand therapy, Craniosacral Therapy, and Manual Lymph Drainage. I kept looking for that thing that resonated with me. While I learned a lot with these courses and they brought me more understanding and different teachings to use, none of them were it for me. And they didn't teach people how to help themselves. It was another technique to do to them. Now, I've owned my own business, Atthasama Yoga, since 2017 and have an office located inside Core Physical Therapy in West Des Moines. I offer mainly private sessions focusing on helping people become aware of their basic resting, breath, and posture. That was a big one for me. And imbalances that they may have. And that last part was me as actually Tyler, not Pam. I need to clarify there. Let's do that again. And the imbalances that they may have, and then helping them retrain them through. And I was going to ask how to pronounce this, Pam. Buteyko. Breath re-education and somatics. Then I help them retrain their functional movement with additional tools from yoga, including the poses, philosophy, and Ayurveda.
Yeah, Ayurveda.
Ayurveda, the sister science to yoga, so that they can keep themselves moving well and helping them to decrease their pain and or tension. I lead 200 and 400-hour therapeutic Soma Yoga programs in Des Moines through Yoga North International Soma Yoga Institute, and I'm also starting to offer continuing education in somatics and breath work to PTs, OTs, and possibly massage therapists in the future. So again, welcome to the show. I know there's some words in there that people maybe haven't heard, and I'm sure we'll explore them. But like I said, one of the big things for me that I've shared with Pam was my basic resting, breath, and posture. That's one of the things that we worked on a lot. And then I also had another big win thanks to working with Pam when I was able to move from mouth breathing while I was running to breathing through my nose. And when she challenged me with that, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just do that. And I had to take I basically did a couch to 5K again because I did a minute of breathing through my nose and I was already winded. So, but now, I'm running, 13 miles breathing through my nose. So, lots of improvement for me there. So again, Pam, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler.
So we talked in the bio about what you've been up to, but I would love for you to just jump into, telling us more about the passion or passions that you're currently pursuing.
Yeah. So many years as an OT, and as I was getting older, I had some aches and pains that I wasn't able to heal myself through the techniques that I knew. And I also was working with clients that I wasn't really able to help them get to that next place of getting rid of their pain, and actually feeling well. So started looking at some things mainly for myself, really. Started looking at doing more yoga. I grew up an athlete, and so did lots of damage to my body through the years with that, as you're well aware in yourself. And I found yoga, and in the Des Moines area, I went to a place where I was doing power yoga, and it was feeling okay, but I was actually still hurting myself, and actually hurt my knee pretty badly in a yoga class. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'm trying to be kinder to myself. I'm trying to heal myself, find better balance, and it's not working. And so I don't even know at this point how I stumbled on Yoga North's program that had this piece of somatics. But in 2017, I found my way first to St. Paul to do some training, 1 weekend a month. And I love to tell the story of, like, I didn't really know what I was going to do with this work. I never wanted to have my own business. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to heal myself. Who knows where it's going to take me? And the first weekend when I was doing this somatic work, which is really small, slow, mindful movements, which is not my personality, I was pissed off. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I just signed up for 9 months of this. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. I want to get out of this. And literally by the end of that weekend, as I was driving home from St. Paul to Des Moines, I had a conversation with my husband, and his words to me were, wow, I haven't heard you this excited about anything since I've met you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it started for me. I was finding that, like, wow, I actually needed some balance in my life of not going hard and fast all the time, doing this slow, mindful way of moving and paying attention to what was happening in my body was actually doing me a lot of good. And literally the second weekend I went up, so it started in maybe October, in November, my business name was born. Ann Maxwell, who's one of the co-owners of Yoga North, was at the blackboard, and she was talking about the Yoga Sutras, which are kind of the Bible of yoga in a way.
Okay.
And the first one is Atha. That's the name of my business, and it means the time is now. The time is always now for yoga. And I was like, that's it. That's my business name, Atha. So
Very
since
cool.
then, my kind of passion has been to spread this work of somatics and this way of, like, paying attention to yourself from the inside out so that you actually can bring yourself better balance and help yourself to heal.
That is very cool. A couple things that I was just thinking about as you were talking through that. Three things. One, I said your business name wrong, so Atah.
That's okay. Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. But my previous the last person I talked to, it'll be the episode that comes out tomorrow on Tuesday, the 1st. She said our passions are usually brought out by personal pains or struggles, turning into something we want to help people get through more easily than we did. And as you were reading it, I'm like, wow, Renee's quote is completely applicable here too. That's really cool. And then I guess the next piece was, you said creating balance, not going hard and fast all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is just, and I know, I'm sure we've talked about that, but it just feels like, I mean, I'm guilty of that, but so many people that I know, it's like, I mean, I can go down a completely only somewhat related tangent, but it's almost a badge of honor to be busy in our society.
That's right.
And it's okay to be driven. It's okay to go after things, but you've got to find those spaces to not go hard and fast all the time.
That's right. And like when we talk about like Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga, like the science is vast, right? It's really expansive. But the premise is, if you're a person who's really driven in the somatics world, we call it a green light pattern, a go-getter pattern, right? You need to find some ways to rest. Otherwise, you burn yourself out. Right. And if you actually learn to bring in some ways to decompress your system, then you actually are recharged and you can get more done. Right. But you have to, it's kind of a hard lesson to learn, right?
Slow down to speed up.
That's exactly right. I say that all the time, right?
Yeah.
And you have to go small to go big again, right? Yeah. Same concept. But on the other hand, there are people that are like, gosh, I can't get off the couch, right? Like maybe they're depressed. We need to find more activity for those folks, right? So like, it's not just those of us that are go-getters, like you and I have that in common, right? But it's whatever we're like strong in, we need to find balance in. That's the premise of Ayurveda.
That's great.
Yeah.
So maybe we can dig into that. I mean, obviously a lot of what you do is watching and seeing and that way, but can you unpack your process a little bit with the listeners? Just, I know Des Moines is a big city. But, you get out into the smaller areas, and I know, the mindset that I probably was drilled into growing up in a small town in Northwest Iowa about yoga and whatever else. Like, look, just unpack a little bit about what your process looks like, to help people understand if you think that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic because, like when I was a young adult in college and my first job as an OT, I thought yoga was weird. There was
Yeah.
one person, she was
You
a
have to be
speech
a Hindu to
therapist.
do yoga, right?
That's right. Like it's different. Like this gal that I knew, she was a speech therapist that did yoga. Like she was always in this like blissful mood. And I was like, I mean, like, what are you doing over here? Like, get at it. Like it's something done. But she was just always happy. I was like, that's weird. Like, isn't it weird? Like to think that that was weird to me, right?
Right, right.
Gosh, how can somebody always be happy, right? But what's interesting about the way that our Western world in the United States has interpreted yoga is the poses and the posture and like moving hard and fast, right?
Sure.
And when we study the ancient roots of yoga, yoga actually started with mindfulness, meditation, breath work. And then they're like, gosh, we need to move. We need to move our body in all the directions. And we
Hmm.
literally have flipped yoga on its head and how we interpret it here. We start
Sure.
from the outside and move in and then try to get to meditation, like literally from exhausting ourselves when we're in a power yoga class, right?
Right.
And really what we should be doing is like paying attention to what's happening on the inside, listening to what our body's telling us, and then giving it what it needs.
Very interesting.
So
Yeah.
when we think about yoga in ancient tradition, there's 8 limbs. Movement or the poses or asana is one of those limbs, along with
Okay.
breath work, along with meditation, one pointed focus, and actually like the philosophy of how to live your life well.
Yeah, that's good. So if someone, someone's coming to you for the first time,
Yeah.
what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, again, expect the poses. When you walk in my door for the first time, and you can throw in some of your experience if you want,
Yeah.
right? So, like, if we literally sit and we first assess the breath, like all the different qualities of the breath. Is it fast or slow? Are you breathing more through your nose or your mouth? Inhale or exhale focused? How is it showing up in your posture? What are you actually using to breathe? That's the first step, because if we don't address the breath, and like this is like the thing I want to spread far and wide, we all should be addressing the breath. There's so much we can do with the breath, no matter what you're doing in healthcare. It's a piece we've been missing. But if we're not addressing it, all of our body systems are impacted, including our posture. So we look at our breath, see what kind of is showing up in our breath. What kind of practices can we do to change it to make it more efficient and restful? And then we look at your posture. What's overworking in your body? Like when you're standing, lying down, sitting, you're holding yourself in a certain way unconsciously. How does that show up? What's overworking that we need to show how to release or calm down? And then we need to find balance again on the other side of those places that are a little bit weaker so that we can move in all directions well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, we would move into the poses and the postures because that's functional movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see me drop my shoulders there when you
Yes,
said
I
posture?
did. Oh yeah, that's right. That's where I hold my tension.
Yeah, I mean those things just creep up until I tell them to go back down.
That's
It's
right.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and at least
But
you're
I
telling them
am
to go back
more.
down now. Yeah,
What's that?
at least you're telling them to go back down now.
Yes, I was gonna
Mhm.
say I am much more cognizant of them than I was previously. But yeah, they like to sneak up on me.
Yeah,
So, I brought up the quote from Renee because I love that it's for you again, it was you chasing something for you, and now you go, hey, um, y- you know, I can help other people with this. So, and you also said. I didn't, you weren't looking to necessarily start your own business. Some of the questions that I throw out there are, very applicable. Some are less applicable, but I'll try to frame this in a way that makes sense. But for you on this journey, what's been the biggest success, or what are you the most proud of?
yeah. I think it's not really the business. I would say it's bringing this way of looking at how we help ourselves heal by listening to ourselves and doing practices, daily practices, right, to find ourselves in better balance. So that's part of that is bringing the 200 and 500-hour programs to Des Moines, where we're getting more people trained in this methodology of somatic yoga. But also now, like I'm in this great space at Core Physical Therapy, right? It's like they're great practitioners.
Yeah.
And many of them are now learning how to use the work of somatics and breath re-education to deepen the practice that they're doing with their clients, again, because they're not getting them to the point they want to.
Sure.
And they're able to teach them to look at themselves and like, gosh, I can help you with your basic breath and posture. And then the work that I do with myofascial release and craniosacral therapy and all those other things gets deeper and better as well.
Yeah,
so I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
my biggest win. And that I did do my first class for just PTs. Gosh, it was in May.
Okay.
People I know, great practitioners. So like I started that course with like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited. And like, I'm really nervous. You guys are all great practitioners, right? And like, they all came away with like, gosh, I can start using this stuff right away. I'm so glad I did this course. So
That's great.
That's kind of my next, like, oh my gosh, I really want to expand this because I feel like we can be doing it differently and in my opinion, better.
Right. Well, and you think about that too. Like I'm probably an odd client in the fact that I have a podcast that you can share about through most clients. You're just helping one-on-one, but when you have the ability to teach now, those people go out and are sharing this as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Because like I'm not young, right? You like heard that I was an OT since 1991. So like do the math, that's not a young person, right? So so
young is relative, Pam. I'm telling myself that more and more lately for some reason.
But like, it's well, to back up just a little bit. So this work is the work of Thomas Hanna. He's the person who invented somatics.
Okay.
And he started doing this work in the 80s and 90s. And he started teaching his first class of other practitioners doing the same work of like, I'm going to spread it to more people. And he was killed in a car accident. So when I was in OT school, we literally, like, I remember my professor Virgil talking about somatics and saying like, we think it's a good technique. We just don't really know much about it. Right.
Huh.
So like it took a long time for the medical field. It's still taking a long time for the medical field to accept this work of like, gosh, we can actually teach people to pay attention to themselves from the inside out so that they can heal it themselves.
Yeah. Wow. So, and I don't know if you can do this without sharing names, but I'm just curious, do you have any like, do you have one or two clients that you're like, this turnaround was amazing or anything like that you might like to share?
Yeah, sure. So one of the first people I worked with when I was starting this training was a coworker of mine. She's an OT assistant and she has scoliosis. And literally, like, she was at her wit's end. She was like, I'm not going to be able to work anymore. Like, she was in pain. And like, knowing her, like, you would never know, like, on the surface, she just hid her pain for years because she just went through life, right?
Yeah.
It was getting to the point where she couldn't do it. And I remember when I was first starting doing this work, I would go to people's houses. And so I went to her house and we were having a conversation and we looked at her breath and I told her like, gosh, that makes total sense to me why you're not able to get a full breath because this is what's happening and your spine is rotated and all these things are going on. And no wonder you don't have breath support to read your kids a bedtime story at night. And she literally started crying. And she was like, everybody else that I've talked to in the healthcare field has looked at me like I'm crazy. Right. So like changing her breath, getting her better breath support, getting her to release her low back and to get a little bit more balance. Like she had scoliosis from birth, so we're never going to fix it, but we can certainly keep it from getting worse to having multiple surgeries. Right. So, so she's like a personal like win for me right off the bat because A, she was a friend and B, I was like, wow, this stuff really works. Even for somebody who's got something that like is going to be a lifelong thing that they're going to have to deal with. We can still work on finding better balance so that we don't have to suffer quite so much.
Right. So it's not necessarily, it's not going to be a cure for everything, but if you can lessen symptoms, if you can, improve quality of life, right?
That's right. Well, and it's interesting that you say a cure, right? Because like life is life, right? So like, life is going to happen to us. We do something and we injure ourselves, right? But these tools of breath re-education, like getting our breath at a good resting place, like looking at our postural muscles and getting them more balanced and then moving well is something we can do every day to try and find better balance, no matter what happens to us. So just to even share a personal story, like I was in a car and bicycle accident when I was in college and had really bad neck pain and injuries. And I knew that my next road was going to be having surgery on my neck.
Oh,
And
wow.
I see what happens with people that do that and they have surgery after surgery and nothing
Yeah.
really gets better. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So that was one of my motivations to start to heal myself. And I can say out loud that I don't know what it's like to have neck pain anymore.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was a huge kind of unwinding for me, and like a really like a prove to me that this work is really something, and it's not an overnight fix.
Right.
Right. So like I think that's the one thing that is really different in this work is it's a practice, right? It's a way of like talking to yourself, communicating with yourself, looking at yourself of what's happening in my body and what can I do for myself with persistence and patience over time to retrain. Right. Because
And
most of
that
the
has been my shortfall with this is
yeah,
putting in the regular work. I'm
yeah.
pretty hit or miss with it.
For sure. And I think, like we think that we have to go to an hour yoga class or get on our mat for a half an hour, right? And those things are fantastic. But really, the work is starting to pay attention to yourself throughout the day,
Yeah.
right? So, like when I notice that my low back is starting to get a little achy, like, gosh, it's whispering to me, like, hey, I need something. Could I do a little bit of the techniques that we've learned in somatics or breath work to help myself out so that I don't go further down the road of going further in pain?
Yep. Yep. I will say, I guess I tend to be hard on myself. I did say, the breath work has been helpful for me. I'm much more cognizant of having both feet on the ground rather than, kind of sitting with one cocked because I know what that's doing to twisting me. So I do some of, I
For
have
sure.
taken some away. I'm just not very good about the daily, end of
Yeah.
the day
And you had a
stuff.
big win, like you did a big run or something like that. You're like, hey, I was able to do this run that I wasn't able to do for a long time. So,
Yep. Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. So on the flip side of the success, what's been a setback or a struggle that you've had to push through, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that this work is very different. So, what I've found in sharing this work with other healthcare professionals is they don't want to accept it
Mm,
sometimes, right?
yep.
Because it's different. It kind of bumps up against the methodology that they know because it is a
Right.
different way of looking at things. So that was one thing is like I have to do a lot of education of what I do because it's different. The other piece of that is that some people then wanted to steal what I was doing, even though they weren't doing it well. And that was really hard as well.
I'll bet.
Still is, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing for me is that it's a big challenge of what we've been taught in the schools, the OT schools, the PT schools, the doctor schools, the nursing schools, right? It's a different philosophy in a way. Um, and like when we do the training, we actually are doing it ourselves, right? So we're learning it, we're healing ourselves, we're like learning how to do this work ourselves rather than
Right.
when you go to school, you learn the techniques to do to other people, right?
Yeah.
So we're living the walk as we do it. So that's the challenge also is to get people to in the healthcare profession to slow down and be like, gosh, I can help you. And you've got to take time to learn something different.
Yeah.
Again, same mentor, Ann Maxwell, at one point looked at me and she said, at some point you're going to have to take your OT hat and leave it outside the door. And then eventually you get to take and put your hat back on and bring back all that knowledge, but you've got to let some of it go.
You gotta let some of it go because some of it needs to be retrained,
That's
just
right.
like our
Just like we
breathing
do
or
in our
our
bodies.
posture,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, and that makes a ton of sense. And there was a line in your bio that spoke directly to that too. Is like you needed to learn instead of doing it to someone. I'm gonna mess it up, but it was instead of doing it to someone to help walk alongside them, or I forget how you said it, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically teaching them the practices, right? So that they
yeah,
actually feel empowered to be able to do something for themselves.
for themselves that they're in. Yeah, well, and I've said this or a variation of this on in several conversations, in this podcast and many more outside of the podcast. But what you said about even retraining medical professionals, I think about what we're dealing with Ari and her this autoimmune disorder,
Yeah.
and the neurologist or sorry, not the neurologist, the thyroid specialist. I'm going to totally blank on endocrinologist. There we go. When we start talking about changing diet, Jess is talking about an autoimmune protocol and she has to ask what that is. And I'm like, oh, this is a problem. Like,
That's right. That's right.
and not a problem because what we're doing isn't right. Like, it's like, why do you not know this? Or at
Right.
least like have some knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And
And our
that's
medical system has gotten really compartmentalized, right? Which is
right.
great because we have like really great experts in a small thing. And I think in that world, then we're missing the global view, right?
Yeah.
The whole person view.
I got blinders on,
That's
when
exactly
it
right.
comes to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, and hopefully she never listens to this, but I'm sure she's fantastic at what she does. But we were both just like, that feels like that might be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you, um, as you continue on this journey, what dream or what goal haven't you reached yet?
Yeah, oh gosh, that's a big one, right? I think really for me, it's getting enough practitioners, whether it's PTs and OTs, counselors, because it's also a great technique for mental health, just yogis in general, like that are doing yoga therapy, which is different than just yoga. Um, like getting enough practitioners trained in this work that I feel like it's going to continue, not just in Des Moines, but elsewhere. Like I'm not the only one doing this work, right? Like there's lots of practitioners in Minnesota, but
Yeah.
spreading this work into different areas that people learn that they can actually heal themselves. Like that would make me feel good about moving into a retirement at some point, right?
Sure.
I've actually said out loud, like, I don't like as an OT, I was like counting the years of like, gosh, when am I going to be able to retire?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't ever see myself actually giving this up.
Well,
It's
that's a good spot to be in. I mean,
yeah,
when you
for sure.
enjoy something well enough that you're not still like, hey, when is retirement?
Right. When do I have to like not do this anymore? Right. Like, and now it's like, well, how can I do it and give the most to people, like teaching people, right? And still
Right.
see maybe a few clients, but like decreasing the hours, but still being in it, still teaching
Yeah.
people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the mental health arena, but there's probably not probably. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of like three or four counselors that I know that would probably be like, yeah, I could integrate that, and
For
I wouldn't
sure.
even have thought about that. That's great.
Yeah. In fact, we had just in our last 200-hour training, the entry level training, a gal, Ellen Peterson, and her whole group now is getting trained in this work and helping it for nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
just the
So
breath work and the releasing the tension patterns.
right. And that I think that's immediately where my brain went is like,
Hmm.
even if they don't get into all of it, just the how, yeah, like how releasing that can be to actually do that breath work. And I know for Jess especially, like I haven't, don't get me wrong, there has been, especially recently, a little more anxiety than I would care for. But I think one thing that she has uncovered and she really enjoyed when she was working with you was, she's kind of wired where she's almost always in the fight or flight mode
That's
if
right.
she's not cognizant of that. And so I think about how many other people could be, by doing that breath work could release a lot of tension and anxiety.
For sure. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because like when we think about breath work, typically, like we think about sports or we think about like music
Right.
and things like that, right? But if we go into music or sports or whatever the heck we're doing and we don't calm our nervous system and get our resting breath at a good place, we're adding tension on top of tension. Right. So
Yeah.
we've got to get things at a good baseline before we can actually improve. Like just like you with your running, like I actually need to like get my mouth closed and breathe through my nose because it actually does so many good things for me. It helps me to connect with my diaphragm. It's building my endurance better, right? So like even though you had to kind of redo everything, by the time you get to the end, you're actually functioning better. It's the
Yeah.
same with our posture.
Yep. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So I know it was now getting close to 10 years ago, I guess, but when you kind of set out on your own to do this, if you think back to that time, a lot of people that are listening to that show or listening to this show, excuse me, are working on a passion project or they're, trying to figure out what their passion is. If you think back to that time, what do you have any advice to somebody that's, trying to take those first steps or maybe they're, you know, 10 steps in and they've run stuck. Do you have any thoughts that you might like to share on one or both of those kind of situations?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think passion finds you, right? So like
Yeah.
that's the first thing is like so when we talk about even the philosophy of yoga, there's a piece of the work that's called the yamas and niyamas. That's kind of the philosophy of yoga. And the
Okay.
last piece after you've done all these things of like honesty and truthfulness with like who you are and all these different steps is letting go. Right. So let go and like actually let yourself be open to new things. Let yourself be willing to fail, to find things that don't work.
That's
And
good.
the other thing is like once, like for me, when I started this work of like, I wanted to connect with people. I knew people in the healthcare industry, you know, I knew different people that were doing similar work, but different. Got some really great support and I got some bangs on the head. But like find your people and keep looking.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that's really important, especially if you're doing something new. Some people aren't going to like it. Some people are going to be scared of it. Some people are going to like say, "Hey, this isn't any good." And there's going to be the people that like raise you up and like just keep looking because they'll be there, even though sometimes it feels like there's not anybody.
Yeah. That's good. That's such a great reminder. Is yeah, find your people. Because a
Yeah,
lot of times the people that are your people when you jump into something like this are going to be the people that drag you down.
that's
And
right.
so
Mhm.
sometimes you gotta either, make them once in a while friends or just not talk to them.
That's right. That's right. And I think, you know, the other thing that comes to mind is I know an acupuncturist here in town who was one of the first acupuncturists in the area. And
Okay.
that was weird, right? When it came to good old Des Moines, Iowa, the
Yeah.
center of the United States, right? And she said, when I first started doing this, she says, Pam, you got to give it away. You got to show people what you're doing, right? Get them in, do a session with them, go to offices, do a practice with people, like, show them what you're doing because you can't explain it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to do that forever, right? You know,
Right.
like that's how you get people to understand what it is actually feeling it themselves.
Yep. Yep. I love that because for a lot of for a lot of passion projects
That's
that
right.
could be applicable. I
For
mean, I
sure.
think I always, because I know there's a variety of different listeners here. Some of them they're just looking, they're just in a hobby because their
Right.
day job isn't fulfilling, and
Mhm.
all the way to people that are, fully running their own business. But, when you're at that spot of trying to figure out how to launch, when to launch, what you just said is some really good advice. Like you may want to give it away for a while.
Yeah.
Just to get people, especially if it's something new. Like that's
Right.
really, really great advice. Like get into some businesses, show people what it is,
Yeah.
because if you try to explain, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back, like when I first heard about acupuncture, hey, can you imagine trying to explain that to people? Hey, I'm going to
Right.
stick pins in you and you're going to feel better, right?
Right. And it works with the energy systems of your meridians. Well, what's a meridian, right?
Right.
Yeah. And like the way that she put it to me was it's not like you're actually giving away money, right? Because you're going to have to spend money on marketing, right?
Right.
This is marketing money.
Yes.
Well
That
spent.
and for something that's going to be really hard for people to grasp, probably better well spent than an ad in the newspaper or on the radio,
For sure. Right. Because we've got so much of that now bombarding us all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's great. So that would be one of my takeaways is how is there a way to creatively market this and maybe give it away so that so people know what you're doing and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to switch gears for a second, because one question that I always love to ask is, tell us about your dreams as a kid, or what did 7 or 10-year-old Pam want to be when she grew up?
Yeah, I loved physical activity. I love sports. So like my favorite person growing up was my gym teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my internet was just a little unstable there. Yeah, so like I wanted to be a gym teacher. And it's interesting. This question was just asked to me, like, what was the best piece of advice you, and it was back when I was a young kid when my gym teacher said, don't be a gym teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said, I see that you love sports. I see that you love all these things, but like you're going to do something that's more impactful. And like people need exercise, but like you have different things to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. I mean, I think a lot of times there's that person maybe end of high school or college that points us away from where
Sure.
we're heading. It's interesting that at, already in grade school, he was like, nope, you're going to do bigger than this. So
Yeah.
don't follow me.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of interesting because like he was really influential on me, as were my basketball and volleyball coaches and track.
Yeah.
You have to throw track in there because it's the same coach, but um but
Small
like
school,
that's
multiple
right. That's
hats.
right. You do all the things, right? But like, yeah, they really helped shape me. And like interestingly, like not in the point of like being a better athlete in a way, like that certainly was part of it, but like
Right.
being a better human being and like doing the things that you love.
Yeah, those are the best coaches.
Hmm.
My high school football coach, it's funny now because like as an adult, I think back on the methods, that were part of football practice, and it's like, oh, that's what he was doing. Like it was
You didn't
meant
get
to
it as a
make us
kid.
better football players, but it was also like I think about some of the speeches that he gave, and it was like, that was about way more than football. We
That's
just,
right.
we at the time we maybe didn't grasp it, but it definitely planted that seed.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, okay, maybe, that's where doing things for younger people is interesting to me. And like maybe that's something that I need to explore more, but like you can you can make a huge impact on adults as well, but like you think back to yeah, now I'm going down a rabbit hole, but
Well,
thinking to
that's
your
great. I'll go
story.
with you if you don't mind. So like
Yeah, please.
I work mostly with adults, but
Yeah.
I've worked with some athletes. And again, like since that was part of my past, it's really interesting to me to think about how we get kids into sports nowadays, right? Because it's so young and it's so competitive at such a young age that kids, like, I didn't know what it was like to have a sore back or to have, some kind of like in something like that going on when I was a kid. And there's so much of it nowadays. There's kids that are passing out on the courts, on the fields because their nervous system is overwhelmed. And so
Wow.
we need to sprinkle in some of this work of nervous system regulation and also like how to release some of the muscle tension that you've got, which is the piece of somatics that's different because all we focus on is going harder, bigger, faster, right? We don't
Right.
teach ourselves to actually come down to rest.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm super excited about like trying to work with young athletes or, young, whatever they're doing, music, whatever. Like we need to be able to teach kids that like this isn't the way that we should do things, right? We don't have to work to the point of like passing out on the volleyball court because we can't handle it. That's not
Yeah.
okay.
Right. Right. Well, and then the whole we didn't have phones when we were kids,
Right.
and
That's right.
I've read a couple of books now there too where it's like I'm just adding layers of all not just phones. I mean everything's on screens now, and the
That's right.
layers that we're adding there. If we can, even if it's just for kids to focus on their breathing, like
For sure.
that's really important stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And just mindfulness, like slowing down a little bit, right? Like we don't think about being on the phone as going fast, but when we're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, our mind is doing that same thing.
Hmm.
Right. And so
Yeah,
no
yeah,
wonder
there's not definitely not enough credence given there. Well,
yeah,
and I just look at my two kids and Ian, I think recognize well, I mean they're just different. Ian needs downtime.
for sure.
Ari seems like she could just go all the time. And recharge when it's time to go to sleep at night. And in that
Yeah,
way they're wired differently.
for
But
sure.
I also think that there's probably some recognition by both of them of when that downtime is needed and necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a skill that we're not taught, right? We're not taught. Everybody's like, you go to the doctor, like, you need to relax more. How do I do that? Right.
Right.
Because nobody teaches us that. That's a piece of this work, right? Like
Yeah.
teaching people how to get their nervous system calmed down, their breath at a good rate, and like get their shoulders, like you said, like my shoulders are always up. How do we get our shoulders to release? That's what this work does.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Pam, this has been awesome. I knew that coming into it, there'd be, I mean, I knew it'd be a great conversation, but I love the tidbits that you shared about what you do, how you help. I think I told you, off the air, I'm doing a kind of a section on health and kind of alternative ways to take care of yourself. So I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. I'm excited that it worked for us to connect on this. I guess, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you thought that you might want to leave the listeners with? And if not, that's okay too.
Yeah, I would just say, really, when you're thinking about looking at healthcare providers and like what your goals are, think like, what are my short and long-term goals of how I want to live my life, right? Don't just think about, I want to do something like really short-term of like, I don't know, getting my back not to hurt. Like, what do I want my life to look like? And what am I willing to do to get there? And to be open to trying something new, right? Because the things that we've done for 30 years, we're just on the hamster wheel of like going around the circle if we're doing the same things over and over again and expecting that change, right? That's the definition of insanity. So try something new, try it out. And again, just like, when you're looking for your people, it might be that you need to try a couple of things. And like what I found in this work is when somebody comes to me and I'm not the right fit, I can get them to somebody else I know that's in the healthcare field that is doing something different that they didn't know about, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic advice, because I think too many times people are like, my back hurts, I need to go to the doctor.
Right.
Maybe, but like, I love that you said, what are your short and long, what are your goals here?
Yeah.
Obviously it's for your back not to hurt anymore, but like, do you want to be able to have your grandkids on your back?
That's right.
When you have grandkids.
That's right.
If that's not important, then
bedtime stories, right? Like,
yeah. Like you said, reading bedtime stories. She was able to take back control of her breath. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you to learn more or to schedule a time, what's the best way is it website? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, website's the best. It's www.atasomayoga.com. Ata is ATHA yoga.com. Yep. And also just Pam at atasomayoga.com. I'm with clients a lot of the day, so email is the best way for me to be able to communicate. Happy to answer questions. And that's the best.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for spending time with us today. It's been very good, and I'm excited about the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you having me and for doing this little blip on healthcare.
Absolutely. And to everybody listening, keep pursuing your passions.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.